Honorable guests, honorable guests, dear sisters, today we have gathered to honor International Women's Day. We all know that women's equality depends on their struggle to overthrow dictatorship and active participation in building a genuine democracy. Equality is a dynamic, exuberant, advocative ideal because every day women around the world are being persecuted and humiliated across the globe. Because the vast majority of women still are not masters of their own selves, emotions, thoughts, and destiny. Because we still see that the patriarchal and reactionary profanities humiliate and marginalize women in the 21st century society. And because still destructive mindset and disbeliefs are barriers to women's advancement. For this reason, we must remove the obstacles and barriers. We must break the glass ceilings one after the other. We must not be satisfied with our achievements and conquer the peaks one after the other. Otherwise, so long as this dominant order prevails, women will continue to be denied of their basic rights. They will be prevented from controlling their own destiny, their society and country. Indeed, the ideal of equality is alive, but not just because of deprivations, humiliations, and oppression, because a generation of women has risen to overthrow dictatorships in Tunisia, Libya, Egypt, Yemen, Ukraine, Syria, and Iraq, and women who are resolved to overthrow the religious dictatorship ruling in Iran. Yes, the ideal is alive, because there are women who seek a higher goal, a world based on freedom, democracy, and equality. It is alive because women chose to fight for rights in Iran 150 years ago, especially after the constitutional revolution. And many countries which chose to bear the suffering and pave the way for today's struggle. During the past century, women stood firm for universal suffrage, struggling to eliminate inequalities at home and at the workplace. They fought to get respect and understanding for their God-given natural differences. But today, far beyond all objectives of equality movements, women have risen for a profound and comprehensible transformation of the old order, that modern liberation movement which is indispensable to the advancement of human society in the 21st century, has at its core the force of women. The force that steers stagnant circles of submission, unleashes energies, shatters the chains of persecution, is the force. The force which will eliminate fundamentalism from Iran, the region and the world, is women's force. Indeed, women are the force for change. And now we must pay homage to women whose memories has kept International Women's Day alive and proud. From Olem Togosh to Clara Zetkin, from Fatemeh Amini, Marzi Uskoui, Azam Ruhi Ohangaran, Mehnoush Ebrahimi, to Ashraf Rajavi, Mahin Rezai, Batul Rajai, and 10,000s of women who were martyred in the course of struggle against the ruling mullahs. Women and girls such as Neda, who was shot by the Revolutionary Guards in 2009 uprisings, to heroines such as Zohre, Giti, Jila, Mitra, Fatemeh, Maryam, Puran, Kulsum, and Roya. We salute them all. Dear friends, 35 years ago, a fundamentalist regime came to power in Iran and built a system of gender apartheid based on eliminating and subjugating women. In sharp contrast, a profoundly democratic movement which believed in equality and was the antithesis to the fundamentalist order rose to overthrow it. The issue was how to treat scars left by Khomeini's betrayal of trust and hope, and how to open the path towards freedom. Masoud Rajavi offered the answer: unequaled and unlimited forgiveness, pioneered by him. We faced a dilemma: submission to fundamentalism or moving forward despite an extremely unequal balance of power. And we chose to move forward. We chose the path of transforming the prevailing culture and the mindset. We embarked on a revolution which shed the reactionary and exploitive thinking and inevitably led to a transformation and emancipation of men as well. This is how we increased our capabilities in the struggle to topple the regime. The pioneering women in this struggle rejected the enslaving mindset and found a new self-belief as human beings. These tireless women never dodge nor submit to problems, no matter how difficult. In the path of emancipation and casting aside restrictions, they have found the power and capacity to accept commitments 100 times greater. They are the vanguards of accepting difficult responsibilities and are role models for collective management. They have made any trace of egoism and me-first mentality a red line. For this reason, we witness a new experience in the struggle for liberation. The presence of these responsible women does not mean the elimination of men, but nurturing a generation of emancipated men who, with active participation in restoring values of equality, have entered a new realm of responsibility, creativity, and capability. Indeed, instead of instinctual behavior to issues, these women taught themselves the ability to hear criticisms and opposing views. And simply put, they learned to listen to others, which is a noble human trait. They learned to devote and dedicate for others, to promote their respect. This is how love and compassion would replace greed and humiliation. Differences of views and the diversity of methods do not waste energies, but become the source of power and progress. Errors and mistakes do not result in elimination and dejection, but become a source for education and improvement. They would form the assets for taking the next steps. Free expression, the most important means of expressing oneself, is a fundamental principle in internal relations of this movement. For members of resistance, active, unconditional self-expression is a value cherished in their interactions. So, these women established a novel social relation motto: criticize, listen back, fight the barriers, do not give up, correct and change, move ahead and leap forward. These women who give primacy to the progress of their sisters are forerunners of a new message. This message, far beyond any words, is embodied in a generation of women whose ideal is dedication for their fellow sisters instead of putting themselves first. I gain my confidence from such a generation which, in the darkness of cruelty, jealousy, and rivalry, has obtained the power of self-sacrifice for other women. They can, despite all their differences, act as one in the struggle for freedom. With this same logic, the men in this movement have learned from the women. Instead of contravening and eliminating each other, this generation of men and women has learned to coincide and avouch each other. With such emancipated and advanced relationships, attacks and aggressions by the enemy are regarded as an opportunity to revert despair and misery to a greater challenge and a leap forwards. Therefore, in critical turning points, all roads lead to higher commitments, stronger bonds, a utopian choice, and a resistance 100 times more fierce. So, we cannot say that the vanguard women of Ashraf are only 1,000, because they have been multiplied at least 1,000 folds. And along with their sympathizers around the world, they have formed a queue which reaches Tehran. Indeed, these women are not individuals, unique and exceptional stars, but a generation of capable and vanguard women whose leadership will lead to the overthrow of the religious dictatorship. And Iranian women can and must lead in forming a democratic, pluralist Iran which heralds peace, liberation and equality.
دوستان عزیز، حضار محترم.
Dear friends, the beast of darkness and wickedness, which thrives on inequality and continuously causes oppression and discrimination, is Islamic fundamentalism, whose heart is beating in Tehran under the rule of the mullahs. The mullahs have dispatched herds of revolutionary guards to Syria. They have sent their proxy groups from Lebanon, Iraq, and other countries, whether Shiite or Sunni, to massacre the people of Syria and are poised to destroy the Syrian people's revolution. The ruling theocracy in Iran and Bashar al-Assad are responsible for the massacre of 140,000 Syrian women, men, and children. Similarly, the bombing and the massacre of Iraq's defenseless citizens in Ramadi, Fallujah, Baghdad, Mosul, Diyala, and Hilla are commanded by the Quds Force and carried out by Iraqi forces. In Lebanon, Palestine, Yemen, Pakistan, and Afghanistan, the political and social future and livelihood of the people in those countries has become hostage to terrorism, fundamentalism directed by the regime. Therefore, there is hardly any country in the Middle East and the Islamic world that has been spared from the Iranian regime's provocations and terrorism. Similarly, the regime has threatened global peace and security by trying to build nuclear weapons. In truth, because of their weaknesses and vulnerability, the mullahs have resorted to waging war on the people of region and the world community. Therefore, if the regime were to abandon misogyny and the export of terrorism and religious discrimination, the ruling theocracy would collapse. Therefore, neither Khatami nor Rouhani, who launched a charm offensive of reform and moderation, did not and do not even get close to easing the oppression and subjugation of Iranian women. Because doing so would mean the beginning of the end of the regime. For this reason, the very bills which Ahmadinejad had submitted to the Majlis to intensify gender inequality are now being declared as law by Rouhani. They say that Iran under the rule of the mullahs is the epicenter of fundamentalism. But we say, owing to the Iranian people's intellectual and cultural history, and by relying on the resistance of the people's mujahideen, Iran is the epicenter of liberation from fundamentalism and at the same time is the epicenter of women's emancipation and equality. This is a bright prospect which Iranian women will bring about.
این شایستگی را
This competence can be seen in a glittering galaxy of martyred and vanguard women. Let me tell you about one of these vanguards, my sister Zohre Qaemi.
آری خواهر عزیزم زهره که
Yes, my sister Zohre, who directed the historic battle at Camp Ashraf on September 1st, 2013, she was a 35-year veteran of the struggle against the mullahs, still bearing scars of torture and the whip, while spending 5 years in prison of Khomeini. When she was commanding the resistance of Ashrafis during the July 2009 assault by the Iraqi forces, she was shot in the leg and face and suffered serious injury. At the scene of the massacre at Ashraf on September 10th, Zohre and Giti Gibechian truly represented the dignity and courage of Iranian women in the face of the ruling theocracy. These are my brave sisters at the scene of September 10th. She was shielding her sisters and brothers. The assassins targeted her and other sisters first and fired at her face at point-blank range. What did the killers see in her steadfastness and her resolute face and look, which they could not tolerate? Yes, they saw their own desperation, despondency, and defeat. And this way, Zohre became a shield to protect the other 42 Ashrafis who survived that horrific massacre. Nevertheless, the most important scene of Zohre's struggle was her fight for a grand ideal, for emancipation, equality, and freedom. In this path, she had become a role model, owing to her sense of responsibility and her willingness to put others first, in particular when working collectively. The most recent elections within the Mujahideen, the MEK members, elected her as Joint Secretary General. Sabah, Asiye, Mahdiye, Nastaran, and Faize, Fatemeh, Shahnaz, Marzieh, and other Ashrafi women martyrs on April 8, 2011, were among this enlightened generation who had all been nurtured by Zohre. Among the martyrs of Ashraf massacre, Gila Tolu also stands out. As the pictures and the video clips shows, in her last moments, she had used her body as a shield to protect Zohre by hugging her. Indeed, this is a true sisterhood, love and solidarity, which heralds a new historical identity. Indeed, it is. I salute them all. Indeed, the life and martyrdom of each one of them is itself a telltale of a ferocious battle this generation has waged to liberate Iran. And their collective account and experience herald the victory of Iranian women in the struggle for freedom and equality. This explains why the mullahs and their allies are so enraged. This is why they slander these women with a litany of allegations in a bid to counter their profound impact among women in Iran and elsewhere in the world. But neither massacre nor allegations can prevent the brilliance and advance of this generation. For this reason, defending the vanguard women at liberty is an urgent responsibility for equality movements. They and their male comrades are not only denied access to security and protection provisions in the face of successive missile attacks, but are deprived of the minimum humane, medical, and health standards by the puppet government of Iraq. I ask you, my sisters, and my sisters around the world, to help the combatants of Iran's freedom at Camp Liberty and urge the United Nations and the United States government to adhere to their commitments to protect the residents of Camp Liberty and to ensure their quick resettlement. They should particularly put on their agenda the release of the 7 hostages and refer the file on this crime to the Security Council and demand for an independent investigation about the massacre on 1st September. This is the urgent demand of all those women gathered here and the equality movement. Dear friends, the fundamentalist ruthlessness and malfeasance are in principle the self-protective reaction by backward forces in the face of a progressive and enduring forces. In our epoch, women are the main components of this progressive force. The ruling theocracy, whose constitution and all of its laws and policies are rooted in discrimination and misogyny, has adopted new misogynist laws and waged war against Iranian women. These laws include forcing families to have more children, the shameful bill that allows men to marry their own adopted daughters, setting quotas and applying gender segregation at the universities, and preventing women from studying 77 fields of study at universities, and many more prohibitions. If you look everywhere in Iran, you will see that Iranian women are targets of oppression, injustice, and crackdown. In Bane, her name is Avin Osmani, 17, who was murdered by the Revolutionary Guards. In Tehran, her name is Somaye, with a 6-year-old daughter, Rana, both victims of an acid attack. In Baluchistan, there are girls under 15 years of age subjected into forced marriages. And they are mothers and women who have gathered outside Qizil Hisar prison or the Majlis to protest against the execution of their loved ones. And they are enraged Bakhtiyari women in this full Masjid Sulaiman, Ali Gudars, Azna, Durud, Ize and Isfahan, who rose up against the mullah's oppression and insults 2 weeks ago. And they are our brave and resistant sisters who have brought the henchmen to their knees in prisons. To them all, and to my sisters and daughters across Iran, I say, stand strong and persevere. This misogynist regime is on its last legs. At this juncture, Iranian women and all women in the region must move from being hopeless to being hopeful. They have to move from simply being angry to becoming inspired to change and to bring about change. They must move away from grief and dejection to nurturing new energy for moving forward. Yes, it is time to move forward. Martin Luther King once said, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but bends towards justice." Undoubtedly, the Iranian women and the women of the region will have justice, freedom, and equality as destiny. Indeed, rest assured that ultimately these oppressed women will overthrow the ruling theocracy in Iran. Yes, Iran and the region will be free. Dear compatriots, we seek democracy, a democracy based on freedom, equality, and the separation of religion and state. We want individual freedoms for all, pluralism, abolishing of the death penalty, equal rights for women in freedoms, in fundamental rights before the law, in the economic arena, in the family, and in having freedom of choice in all spheres, including clothes. We emphasize women's active and equal participation in the country's political leadership. Indeed, we seek a new order and are intent on overturning this antiquated and reactionary order in its foundations. For this reason, we renew our pledge, the pledge to expand the battle until there would be no trace of gender-based, class-based, and religion-based slavery. Hail to arisen women across the world and in Iran. Hail to 1,000 vanguard women in liberty. Hail to freedom. Hail to all of you.